waiting. I'm live. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Today is April 29th. It's been a rainy day in the city of Albany and probably all of Albany County. We're glad to be here. So Audit and Finance Committee, we might be a few minutes late. Our previous meeting, committee meeting ran over, but we're ready to get started now. So the first thing that I'm going to do is ask our majority counsel to take attendance for me, please.
Sure, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Willingham?
Present.
Peter?
Present.
Bergdorf?
Present.
Clay?
Present.
Grimm?
Here.
Joyce?
Here.
Lukakis?
Here.
Mayo?
Here.
And O'Brien.
Here.
All present, Madam Chairwoman.
All right, thank you very much. For those of you who might have your are unmuted, be careful of your background. Thank you very much. All right, so now we are going to get started, and we'll start with the previous business. We're going to start by approving the previous meeting minutes.
Motion, Madam Chair.
I got a motion from Mr. Peter.
Second.
I got a second from Mr. Clay. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And number two.
Number 2 is authorizing a one-time amnesty period for reduction of interest charged on delinquent property taxes. And this has been tabled at the request of the sponsor.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. Okay, so now let us go to number 3.
Item 3 is establishing a policy and eligibility requirements for the 2021 legislative grant program.
Okay, is my chairman here?
Your chairman is here,
Hi,
Deputy Chairwoman.
hello, Chairman Joyce. How are you this evening?
Good, how are you? Good to be here.
Great, great. Now, are we gonna have a photo bomb tonight?
I don't think so. He's face deep in a bowl of mac and cheese right now, so he's
Oh,
distracted.
okay.
So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak tonight. I'm very excited to share that we're getting very close to restarting our legislative grant program for 2021 and hopefully beyond. We shared an updated draft policy with the membership. We've gotten a lot of good feedback in on some changes and some ways we can kind of move forward with the grant program. One of the key bits of input that we got was that we make this grant program merit-based and equitable across Albany County. Whether you be a legislator that represents the West Hill, the South End, Cohoes, Waterville, Green Island, Loudonville, Albany, everyone should have the same fair shake with this grant program in terms of their application and kind of a merit-based graded type policy that we want to move forward on. So we got some good feedback in. We've made those changes, if I'm not mistaken, and those changes have been updated to reflect on what you should see on your devices. And unless there's any questions, I hope we can move this out favorable and we can restart our grant program for 2021 and beyond.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Are there any questions of the chairman this evening? Any comments?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Mr. Grimm.
Yeah, I'm supporting this. I want to thank the chairman for, there was some discussion about this. My big concern is I want to make sure all 39 legislators have a fair chance to this money, not just have it steered towards one place or another. And I think the changed language makes that realistic. And I appreciate the movement from the chairman and his staff.
Madam Chair.
Very good. Did we admit Mr. McGuire?
He's not trying. He's in.
Okay. All right, Mr. Peter?
Yes, I also want to thank the chair. If there are no other questions, I would like to move this, and I'd also like to add my name as a sponsor.
I'd like to second it.
Okay. It appears as if I have a motion from Mr. Peter and a second from Mr. Bergdorf. Do I have any other comments before we vote?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right. Can I get all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. All
Thank
right.
you.
Number 4, Ms. Kennedy.
Item 4 is establishing a living wage for employees of the County of Albany and amending the 2021 Albany County budget.
Can I just do one thing here? I think I'm gonna take this out of order, all right? And I'm going to go to Ms. Rizzo. Start with number 5, please.
Sure. Item 5 is requesting the New York State Legislature enact legislation regarding the refinancing of municipal bonds for the Shaker Place Rehabilitation and Nursing Center.
Ms. Rizzo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the committee members of Audit and Finance. Due to the complexity of this, I'm here with Ransom Moore, my Chief of Staff. Joe Scott is our bond counsel. Dave Riley is the Commissioner of Management Budget. Larry is with the Shaker Place Rehabilitation Center, and Luke Rogers is with the Exec's Office. The Comptroller's Office is presenting for approval a request for a home rule message. We would like this New York State legislation to adopt a special act that will authorize the county to issue an advance refunding. The need for the advance refunding pertains to the Shaker Place Rehabilitation and Nursing Center. These bonds were originally borrowed in April 2018 with an 11-year maturity. Since Shaker Place will receive the reimbursement from Medicaid over 20 years, not 11 years, this has caused and will continue to cause a deficit for Shaker Place for the entire 11 years. The need for the special act is due to the structure of the advanced refunding of the 2018 bonds. By extending the maturity to 20 years, this requirement will not comply with the present value savings according to New York State local finance law. The extended payment term will then match the revenue stream projected by Shaker Place. I'd like to entertain any questions at this time.
Mr. Bergdorf.
Sue and Joe Scott, how is it that if we had a 20-year amortization of the nursing home in 2018, approved by the Certificate of Need by the New York State Health Department, how is it that bond counsel and underwriters counsel and everybody allowed or recommended an 11-year payback? Do we know?
You want me to go first, Joe? Is that?
Sure, Ms. Rizzo.
So obviously this was a decision by the previous controller. And just to my understanding is, and Larry can also speak to this, that Larry had conversations that he actually wanted a 30-year term initially. And then the controller didn't want to do 30 years. He said, you know, Larry said he needed 20 years. And I think what happened is there was a bond that they were taking all the bands at the time, and they were doing an $140 million bond. And unfortunately, at the time, there should have been 2 bonds, one for the Shaker Place and one for the 20 years for all the bands. This would have cost the county approximately $50,000 at the time because we would have additional fees and legal fees. I can't speak for the previous controller, but I think Larry did put his best foot forward of expressing his concerns why he needed 20 years. And he did get Medicaid to change from, 30 years to 20 years on the schedule. But it did, it was done for 11 years. Now, Joe can speak further as far as the useful life and why they didn't bifurcate this bond.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Rizzo. In short, Mr. Bergdorf, I can't explain the mismatch. Legally, what was done was perfectly acceptable. The borrowing term conformed with New York law. If it was longer, it would conform with New York law. But at the 11-year term, it did conform with New York law. To be honest, I think my only explanation was that obviously the shorter the term of the borrowing, the lower the interest rate. I think there was some emphasis placed on the size and the amount of the interest that was going to be paid with respect to the financing. But with respect to what now is clearly a mismatch between revenue and debt service, I do not have an explanation. But there was no legal violation. I want to stress that. Underwriters Council didn't drop the ball. Bond counsel did not drop the ball. And because these bonds are full faith and credit bonds of the county and not revenue bonds issued by, for instance, a state agency, the apparent mismatch does not create a legal structural problem with respect to the bond financing.
Okay, thank you, because it's just sort of odd that we find ourselves in this predicament. I may not have enough fingers and toes to figure this out, but we're going to save $1.8 million per year for, is it 20 years?
Well, we save $1.8 million, but after the 11 years, then we, because you're extending your bond for a longer period of time,
Yeah.
you're actually going to be paying more money. And so it's a net present value of a negative $4 million. And that's why
So it's
gonna
going to
cost us more money.
Well, that was my point.
Yes,
Because I want people to realize that by stretching out this loan in order to get, it's like, refunding your mortgage that you have 10 years on and going out 30 years, you may pay less, but in order to fully amortize your house, you're going to spend more. So we're going to pick up $1.8 million in savings for
the first 11 years or so.
the first 11 years, but ultimately it's going to cost the county an additional $4 million for extending the term. And I just want to make sure that everybody, I understand the reason for doing that. I understand our cash flow situation and the nursing home and COVID, but I just wanted to, highlight the fiscal aspects of it.
Right. And also to add to that, the pandemic obviously was a big impact for this year. And as well as it's going to take a couple years to get the nursing home up to the levels of expectations, to stabilize this income. So that didn't help as far as having this 11-year versus 20-year. So that's why the shortfalls are greater.
If you go out with a new bond issue, and this may be a question for Joe, do we have any potential if the nursing home exceeds financial expectations that some of the money could be used to prepay this extended 20-year debt?
I can answer that question. No. A bond is different than just having a mortgage, so to say. A bond, you can never prepay. You only can use the money if you had any savings at the end of the bond that you borrowed too much money, you can use it towards principal and interest, but you can't prepay your principal amount. We can earn interest on it, but right now there is no interest market as long as we don't affect arbitrage. But Joe, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, I think to elaborate on your answer, Ms. Rizzo, you're absolutely right that if we have excess proceeds, that doesn't save the county any money. I think what if I'm understanding Mr. Bergdorf's question properly, is that if the revenues coming in from the nursing home exceed what is expected or what is estimated, and there's an additional cash influx, if you will, to the county, can the county prepay the advanced refunding bonds that we want to issue in 2021? And the general answer to that is that bonds, when you issue fixed rate bonds, those bonds can't be prepaid for approximately 10 years. There's usually a 10-year it's called 10 years of call protection. But following in year 11 on, you can typically prepay. So we could, if we're showing a cash flow savings, if you will, potentially take advantage of that. But recognize that we're in a historically, and we continue to be in a historically low interest rate environment. So prepaying debt oftentimes is not the best use of the money that you're getting from a revenue source. But I think the short answer is, Mr. Bergdorf, assuming that the bond financing is structured the way I typically see a fixed rate financing, that in the later year, you may have the ability to prepay some of this debt.
Okay, does with the structure, does the nursing home currently have a debt service reserve fund? As the county does with a lot of its capital bonds? I see
No,
Dave Riley shaking his head, yes.
I see.
Believe they do. I don't have it in front of me.
I'm looking at debt service. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at debt service in general. I'd have to look at another 2 million. We have about 2 million in debt reserve
Yeah.
For the
That sounds right.
nursing home.
for the nursing home.
Okay, for the nursing home. Yeah, so I have a question. Is there something about 5 years, our ability to refinance? Because we don't have the 20 years? Is there something? So I think somebody was trying to explain something earlier about that.
I don't know about 5 years. If the first, I guess legally, the way this bond was structured, the first time we can actually do a refunding would be 2026. But we can't wait to 2026 to do that refunding because our shortfalls are so great and the hit on the fund balance would be so great that it would eat up quite a bit of our fund balance.
But is that because we didn't finance at 20 years and we finance, is that why?
Yeah, correct. Because we'll save about, what was it, 1.8 million a year in the initial years. So that helps with our deficit. So we will still have a deficit. Well, let's see. Reduced annual debt. So, okay, well, we will have a deficit for the first couple years before this, because unfortunately, after the pandemic, the nursing home's numbers are going to take a little bit of time to get back to where we thought they would be to stabilize.
Okay. Is it okay if I ask Mr. Slatsky a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Slatsky.
Right.
How do you see the nursing home on a rebound after, the pandemic? As far as, what is our capacity now?
Well, right now, this morning, we were at 189 at a 250. There's still, difficulties filling beds. As I just mentioned earlier, visitation has impacted us. The pandemic for sure has impacted us. Elective surgeries where people going into the hospital and then would need long-term care. People are staying home, not out of work, collecting stimulus money instead of working and being able to care for those that normally would be in long-term care. And as this data shows, there's been a tremendous amount of unfortunately, elderly deaths over the last year. And many of those people would be in long-term care as well. I would say as we're getting vaccinated and getting back to some sort of normal life, our nursing home will begin to increase its census and get to where we need to be, which should be in excess of around 95%. And the nursing home should be doing fine. I mean, we have really the nicest facility in the Albany region for sure. And I know that people will be gravitating to our nursing home. So we work at it. We're watching our numbers. And as the year goes on, we'll be able to answer that question, I think, with more clear data as to where we stand.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any more questions for Ms. Rizzo and her staff or Mr. Slatsky at this time?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Mr. Peter.
if there are no other questions, I would like to make a motion to move this.
I have a motion.
Second,
I have a second. I couldn't tell who that was from. I'm so sorry.
Joe O'Brien.
I have a second from Mr. O'Brien. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much. Thank you all
Thank you.
very much for coming on this evening. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for your answers. I really appreciate the clarification.
Anytime.
Have a nice day and have a nice
Thanks, bye-bye.
evening. Thank you and
Bye.
stay safe. Bye-bye now.
All right, now let's move on to Ms. Kennedy, number 6.
Item 6 is authorizing an agreement regarding excess insurance and amending the 2021 budget.
Ms. Clement?
Yes, good evening. This is for an annual renewal for our excess insurance policy for Midwest Employers Casualty Company. We are requesting to move $20,000 due to an increase in the annual premium of this policy. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the amendment.
Do I have any questions from a member? Mr. Peter?
Madam Chair, this passed unanimously last night in law, and if there are no questions, I would love to make a motion for this.
I second the motion.
Okay, I got a motion and I have a motion from Mr. Peter and I got a second from Mr. Clay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Now, we're going to go to number 7. And I would also like to take, after number 7, did I say 7 or 6? 7. Number 7, I would also like to take number 16 out of order and take that along with number 7. Okay? Ms. Kennedy?
Item 7 is authorizing agreements with various lead partners regarding the comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse program.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. This is Pat Alderson from the County Executive's Office. I'll be presenting on this tonight.
Will you also be speaking on number 16?
Sure, I can speak on behalf of that as well. I'll do them in order. So
Yes.
legislative approval is required to subaward the previously accepted COSAP grant to Albany lead law enforcement assisted diversion partners. These partners include the Lead National Support Bureau, Catholic Charities Care Coordination Services, the Center for Law and Justice, and the Albany Police Department. The award was previously accepted in December by legislative action. However, we need to subcontract the grant to these partners because they are outside of county government.
Okay, are there any questions? Because I think I may have one.
I do, Madam Chair.
Mr. Bergdorf?
You had indicated that the subcontractors included the Albany Police Department. Is there a reason no other police departments within the county are partners or had an opportunity to participate in the awards?
Sure. So the Albany Police Department is the only one that's articulated by resolution here or in this request because they're the only ones who are actively involved with LEAD currently. There is money set aside in the grant for expansion of the LEAD program down the road. We're just not at a position right now where that infrastructure can be brought to those other municipalities. But that's something that's going to happen within the next 2 to 3 years, ideally. And at that point, we'll have to come back to you folks to amend the contract and subaward to another police department.
Okay.
Well, I just find it concerning that with the opioid crisis, that there is a one partner of focus for a police department, because I know that the opioid crisis is as intense in our suburb as it may be And I'm a little taken back that it may take 2 or 3 years to
So-
get to the point where we may be able to share opioid settlement funds with the rest of the county.
So if I may, this doesn't have anything to do with the opioid settlement funds yet. That money is still being decided how it'll be used by the state. This is actually a contract with the Department of Justice directly with the federal government to expand the Albany Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program. That program definitely has a nexus to opioid use and abuse. However, it's not limited in scope to only diverting people from criminal justice system involvement who are struggling with opioid substance use disorder. There are other resources at bear. For example, the Health Hub that's run by Catholic Charities that other law enforcement entities in the county can make referrals to for people who have opioid substance use disorder issues.
Mr. Bergdorf, I think the title of the grant, because it's written into the resolution name, is, throwing off a little bit. But this is specifically focused on the, continued investment, improvement, and eventually expansion of the diversion program.
Madam Chair?
Just one moment. The other thing I'm looking at here is that it says additionally a full-time dedicated project director and community engagement and outreach coordinator will be hired. And so am I to understand that part of this money is being used for that?
Yes.
Okay. And so that's in the justification, Paul. And what's it for somebody else?
Once again, as I sit here and I look at the title, authorization to subaward FY 2020 Department of Justice Comprehensive Opioid Stimulant and Substance Abuse Site-Based Programs Grant to Albany League. And so it is keyed in to opioid diversion, and we seem to be seeing more and more of this where some of these programs do not seem to be available to some of our suburban partners.
Well, the other thing that it says here in the justification is that these partners are specified in the MOU from the Albany League began in 2016. Funding will stabilize and build upon the successful foundation that Albany League has already established. Operational capacity will be increased with the addition of case managers to grow caseload capacity by an anticipated 200% and increase of approximately 50 new clients annually. So I think it's definitely, it is, as Mr. Rogers has said here, I think the whole thing is a little bit misleading, but at the same time too, it seems like, it's being used to add additional staff. Mr. Peter?
Yeah, I would just say that like LEAD is a very specific program that the local municipality has to buy into. So if like another municipality wants to buy into it, they have to set up a program for it. So it's sort of like being like, how come we didn't get the grant? Oh, we didn't apply for it. Well, that's not fair. Like at a certain point, if it's very specific, and I actually think that with a cord that we're doing, where we're looking to actually match services, that might be actually a perfect time if a municipality is looking for voluntary diversionary procedures, which again, they have to set up to get grant money, then that's a time to potentially look to expand that, because Accord is, again, that we all voted on in the budget, is looking to make sure mental health, because LEAD is diversionary, it's not just drugs, it's mental health and other things like that.
Poverty
might be a perfect time to actually expand it in those localities if they're interested, because it's another tool, just like Accord would be in the toolbox of making sure that law enforcement is not being used for mental health issues, including addiction and things of that nature. So I would encourage localities that are interested in it to start setting up the infrastructure to make sure they can receive the grants that may be coming from both the state and the federal government for very specific programs.
Is there any other comments from Mr. Rogers or Mr. Alderson?
No, thank you.
No.
Okay. Mr. Peter?
There are no further questions. I would like to make a motion to move this and also request being added as a sponsor.
Second.
Very good. I got a motion and a second. I also would like to be added as a sponsor too. I got a motion and a second, a motion from Mr. Peter, a second from Mr. O'Brien.
Please
All
add
those in-
me as well, please.
Please
Yeah.
add. Is there anyone else that wants to be added to this?
Yes, please.
I see Ms. Lakakis has her hand up too.
And Madam Chair, Ray Joyce.
Me too. Dave Mayo also.
I see Mr. Joyce and I also, I see Dave.
Dave Mayo,
Okay.
yep.
Dave Mayo. Did you get that? All right, so I got a motion, I got a second. All those in favor, did we go with the vote? Just want to make
Aye.
sure.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now I want to move to number 16, Ms. Kennedy.
Item 16 is amending resolution number 472 for 2020 regarding the comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse program and amending the 2020 Albany County budget.
So this request went before the committee in December, and it was passed by resolution. However, the resolution omitted the amending of the 2020 budget. So we're just going back to correct the resolution.
Okay. Any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'm looking in the justification, and in the justification, it says that the county sheriff has the ability to serve the rural communities of Albany County, while a number of municipal police forces have expressed interest in becoming lead partners. Could somebody please tell me which municipal police forces have expressed an interest?
Sure. Colony, Guilderland, and that's it. And the sheriff.
So the only one it's approved for has the sheriff, is the sheriff. So Colony and Guilderland are, while they have expressed a willingness to participate, do not have the ability to?
Well, they would have to build out the infrastructure.
It seems like there's some misunderstanding. Part of this grant is exploring the possibility of expanding an existing program, which has an infrastructure in the city of Albany that's been in existence for multiple years, potentially working with interested partners, utilizing the funding that, absent this grant, we would not have to build that capacity, to explore whether over the 1, 2 to 3 years that Pat mentioned, it could be expanded. So I think we have the same end point in mind. It's just we're kind of caught up on the the verbiage here. So there's no.
Well, I guess maybe we'll take this discussion offline, but I would like to truly understand what the infrastructure is that the Albany Police has and the city of Albany has that the town of Colony or the town of Guilderland would have to build out. And I hope they're not county resources that should be available, whether it's mental health resources or probationary resources, which should be available to those other municipalities. So perhaps it would be good if you could share with those of us or the whole committee, but I would like to have discussions with the town of Colony as to why this is something that they cannot participate in.
I think you were correct in your first assumption, Mr. Bergdorf, that this is something that should be probably talked about offline, so that, a better understanding of what the whole program, is about. and what other municipalities need to do to also have this same resource in their municipality. So we can very easily set something up to make that happen. And so Ms. Kennedy and can talk to Mr. Rogers and Mr. Alderson, about that. Is that correct? Who's responsible for the program?
We can certainly all work with you to make that happen.
All right, thank you very much. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Make a motion to move this, please?
Pardon my parochialism.
Okay, so who'd I get a motion from?
Mr. O'Brien.
I got a motion from Mr. O'Brien. Who can I get a second from?
Second from Mr. Peter.
I got a motion from Mr. O'Brien, a second from Mr. Peter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, so now we have, now let me see. What number are we on? Okay, I want to move to number 8 now.
Item 8 is authorizing an agreement with the New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services regarding the statewide expansion of the Hurl Herring settlement and amending the 2021 Albany County budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. As indicated, this is acceptance of or authorization to enter into the contract for year 3 of the statewide Hurl Herring implementation, which, as we've discussed before, it expanded the 5-county settlement. It's something the county executive pushed very hard for in 2016 and 17, expanded it statewide. And on an annual basis, we work with New York State ILS to put together a budget that's part of the 5-year contract. We work to integrate those budgeted amounts and positions into the annual budget. And then once it's in the budget and signed off on by ILS, we come back to authorize the contract on an annual basis. In the past years, we've had small budget amendments associated with this request, just because there have been minor tweaks as things got worked out with the state. Happily, this year, everything that was proposed in the budget was exactly how the contract shook out. So there are no amendments, just authorization of the contract.
Oh, very good. And what year are we in of the 5 years?
This is the 3rd year contract.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, do I have any comments? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Motion.
I got a motion from Mr. Clay.
Second, O'Brien.
I got a second from Mr. O'Brien. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to number 9 now.
Item 9 is rescinding the authorization to convey real property pursuant to resolution number 439 for 2020 and authorizing the conveyance of 19 Lexington Avenue located in the city of Albany.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
I got a motion from Mr. O'Brien. I got a second from Mr. Clay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number 10.
Item 10 is authorizing the conveyance of real property located at 256 North Allen Street in the city of Albany.
Motion.
I got a motion from Mr. O'Brien.
Second.
I got a second from Mr. Clay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Number 11.
Item 11 is conditionally authorizing the conveyance of real property located at 50 Railroad Avenue in the town of Colony and 54 Railroad Avenue in the town of Guilderland to store away warehousing at Guilderland LLC.
Motion.
I got a motion from Mr. O'Brien.
I'll second.
I got a second from Ms. Lakakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 12.
Item 12 is declaring a portion of 209 Church Street in the city of Albany no longer necessary for public use and authorizing the conveyance of said portion to the Albany Port District Commission.
Motion.
I got a motion from Mr. O'Brien.
I'll second.
I got a second from Ms. Lakakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 13.
Item 13 is authorizing correction of the tax roll for the town of Bern.
Motion.
Got a motion from Mr. O'Brien.
Second.
I got a second from Mr. Clay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. What number are we on? 14?
Item 14 is authorizing corrections of the tax rolls for the city of Albany.
Okay, before I go any further, Mr. McGuire, would you like to speak on these? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can answer any questions if anybody has any. I can just give you a brief rundown of this one. City of Albany, there's a couple properties that had been merged into some, there's 10 properties that were merged into 4 properties. Those 10 properties were inadvertently left on the assessment roll and tax bills were issued for those 10 properties. So what's happened is the properties are actually doubly taxed. The property owners paid the taxes on the 4 new properties, and we just need to correct these 10 erroneous tax bills to a $0 balance.
Okay.
Motion.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second on number 14. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 15?
Item 15 is authorizing corrections of tax rolls for various municipalities regarding real property of the Albany County Land Bank.
Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is a correction for 29 properties within the land bank. The land bank under New York State tax or under New York State law is exempt upon acquisition of real property. Majority of these tax bills were issued right before the acquisition of the property. Once they are acquired by the land bank, they are exempt. So we're just correcting those tax bills so that they are no longer due.
Motion, Madam Chair.
I got a motion from Mr. Clay.
I'll second.
I got a second from Ms. Lakakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. I would like to ask Mr. Rogers and Mr. Riley, do they have any comments they want to make on 11 and 12?
No, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you for passing it, though.
Mr. Rogers?
I'll echo that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now I would like to go on now to number 17. Ms. McClave?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Kennedy?
Item 17 is amending resolution number 22 for 2021 regarding rental assistance during COVID-19 and amending the 2021 Department of Social Services budget.
Ms. McClave?
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee. So this request to accept a grant from the U.S. Treasury came in February before the committee, and we accepted that grant. Since that time, New York State also had received a large sum of money through the Treasury for purposes of emergency rent assistance due to the COVID epidemic, and to the sum of about $880 million. So they have created and requested our participation in the statewide emergency rent assistance program. So we are requesting that our grant award of $9 million be transferred to New York State Office of Temporary Disability Assistance to manage on our behalf. We are guaranteed that we will have a minimum of the $9 million minus whatever administrative fees we use, up to 10% for outreach and engagement, to go for rents to Albany County residents. And then we will also, by participating in the state program, they're handling all the administrative duties. They're establishing a portal. They're taking applications. They're approving. They're denying. They have a hotline. They'll do outreach materials in multiple languages. They're doing all of and they're writing the checks to the landlords. So they're doing all the administrative duties, and we will do the outreach and engagement for Albany County residents who are eligible for the program. So we're asking to transfer that $9 million to New York State for their management.
Okay, very good. Mr. Bergdorf?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Michelle, 2 questions. Do we have any sense out of the additional 880 million, what could potentially be allocated to, actually 3 questions. What could potentially be allocated to Albany County? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, has the program changed substantially to divert the focus from the landlord being the beneficiary of the funds, so that we're helping tenants clear up their back debt to landlords, but we're paying direct landlords? And I guess the last question was, as I think in March, we authorized a contract for United Tenants. That was under the old program. Has that contract been executed, and is it still appropriate, or is there a clawback position where we have to rethink about how we're going to do, how our outreach is going to be integrated with the state's outreach? I know that was a mouthful, but.
Well, I hope I remember all 3, so correct me if I forgot.
Okay,
Ms. McClave, also on that last one with the UTA, add the legal aid in your explanation.
Correct. Yep. So I'll answer the last one first. Yes, we're moving forward with contracts with United Tenants and legal aid, because the state has made it very, very clear that they want us to engage in community outreach and engagement, and that they're encouraging the municipalities to engage with community providers. And we will receive that up to 10% administrative costs for conducting that work. So that leads to your first question. It depends on how great we are at outreach and engagement and getting the word out in the community as to how much of that other money will access in the state fund. We're ahead of a lot of counties in a way, because counties that did not receive a direct allocation, this is not even necessarily on their radar. So they haven't been thinking about it. They haven't been planning their outreach. They haven't been doing an outreach plan, how they're going to engage people, how they're going to find people. So, but we've been doing this for months. We've been thinking about this. So I think we're going to be in a pretty good position compared to some of our other upstate counties in particular, to get a lot of people making applications for the funding. I mean, of course, we are competing with New York City and Long Island as well, although they both got an allocation directly, also New York City, of several $100 million. So they'll be spending that money first. So our goal is to get as much over that 9 million as we possibly can. So we're going to consider it a race. The middle question, I don't remember now. What?
Landlord beneficiary.
Yeah, the program kind of, it's always been designed as a landlord and tenant joint effort, because a landlord can apply for the program. This hasn't changed. It's been the Treasury instruction since the beginning that a landlord can apply, but they must have the sign off from the tenant. So the tenant has to be a participant. So that is going to be a hurdle, I believe, in some cases, because the landlord will submit an application and do as much as they possibly can, but some of the material is going to have to come from the client. A client's unemployment insurance, proof of unemployment, a proof of, reduced income during COVID. That kind of stuff has to come from the client. So the tenant does have to participate.
But you don't see any structure where the tenant could get money that would not go either to a landlord or a utility bill or something like that.
And keep it for themselves, you're
saying? Yeah.
I think it's going to be really, really hard to do that because the checks will be written to the landlord. That is the way that the procedures are written. There are caveats, though, that if the landlord is non-responsive, if the landlord doesn't give the state their employee their tax ID number or their EIN or their social security number, if they don't give that to the state, then it could potentially be paid to the tenant. So if the landlord's not cooperating in that case.
Okay. Thank you very much. We've had a
Make a
lot.
motion to move it.
Yes.
I have
I just
questions, Madam Chair, I have questions.
Yes, but at first, I just want to thank you so much for your presentation on this. I know you've been singing this song for quite some time this week and previous too. And I just want to thank you for how you've given us as much information as you have. Mr. Grimm.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. We had quite an extended discussion about this and just how this money was going to flow, a few months back. But the 9 million from the feds was originally where we were expecting to receive that, but that's changed and that's been sent to the state for them to manage. Is that basically what happened?
Well, we actually received the money
Okay.
and we are asking to transfer it to the state for them to manage now.
Is that minus the 10%?
They will get the 9 million and we will get back the 10%.
Okay.
Okay, why are we sending
And
it?
the other positive thing of all of this is they are responsible for reporting to Treasury. So they will be the contractor, and they will be audited by Treasury.
All right, so they're managing it, but we're responsible for the outreach in our local community.
Yes,
And is the outreach going to landlords and tenants?
that's our plan. Yep.
Because
It'll
it seems
be,
to be the tenants, because I'm glad to see that the checks are written to the landlords unless they can't find them or something. But what incentive do the tenants have if they know the money's not going to come to them? Other than clearing their debt, which is, that's a big item. But
it's a worry. That is a worry for us because actually the program, Onondaga has started their program and they're finding lots of landlords are applying, but tenants are not coming forward as much. So that is going to be a hurdle to overcome. And
the whole program idea was, I guess, rental assistance to help people clear their debt, but also to make the landlords whole. They're the ones who are out the money. So it's really, I'm really curious to see how effectively are getting this money to landlords who, some of them are really hurting.
And well, it's for if we can talk to a tenant, our goal is going to be to talk them into it because it's much better for them to have their rent paid. So we're going to be trying to get people to actually apply for this. The ones that we talk to, there's going to be other people that are going to apply on their own that probably, that we're not going to see necessarily.
Well, Commissioner, what would happen if the landlord comes in and says, geez, I'm really hurting. I really need this money. And the tenant says, I don't want to be bothered because I'm not going to get the money anyway. What do you do in that circumstance?
Well, if we can get the tenant to talk to us, we'll try to talk them into it.
But there's no other way of, if they would refuse to cooperate, then then the landlord's really out the money then, basically.
The tenants will start cooperating if they start feeling like they're going to be evicted. That clearly.
All right, so they can be evicted even though with all the eviction.
Well, I don't know. It's there's an eviction moratorium. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Landlords have been in a difficult spot of not getting money to pay their mortgage and not being able to evict. That's a terrible situation to be in. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Mr. Simpson, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, very quick. Is the application process in place now, or we have to wait for the word for that to come down?
We were informed by OTDA that it will be the portal will be operational in May. So May's a long month. We were just given notice that there's going to be a meeting next week to discuss what their plan is for opening the portal. So it won't my guess is it probably won't be open until the end of May, but hopefully we will be able to get the information on it and start getting the word out earlier than that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the previous comment too. Is not a tenant's refusal to sign off in cooperation with the landlord a basis for them to eventually be evicted? That's a question.
It's very, very potentially, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just would like to make a statement right now. I think a lot of the questions that are raised by this is going to really call for an offline meeting to get out the information on how this is actually going to be implemented. And so right now, what I would really like is, I see that I got, your hand is up again, Mr. Bergdorf. And we do have something else that I want to get to this evening, but I really honestly believe, because I have questions myself, but right now, I just don't think it's a good time in a committee meeting to hash this out, because I think we'll do a lot better if we were in a meeting where we could register our thoughts and our ideas and get responses, so that we, not just this committee can be replied to, but I know this has been before other standing committees of the legislature. All right. So, with that said, I'm going to, Mr. O'Brien, I'm going to call on you, and then Mr. Bergdorf. But I just want you to keep in mind what I just said.
I was just going to make a motion to move this piece of legislation.
Oh,
I have a very quick question or suggestion for Michelle. As you are reaching out to tenant organizations, I would hope that you would consider reaching out to there are a number of landlord organizations in Albany County and in the region. And, I don't know if a contract is necessary with them, but please, I would think they could be your best advocate or your best mechanism to get information to individual member landlords. And that was the only suggestion I was going to make.
Yeah. As
And
I
with that,
I recall, Mr. Bergdorf,
yeah,
that too was one of my questions, but that is something that came up before, and that was a request that we had made of Ms. McClay, if I remember. Mr. Peter.
I'd just like to second Mr. O'Brien's motion.
Okay, so I got a motion from Mr. O'Brien. I got a second from Mr. Peter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Madam Chair, I think I have to abstain as a landlord.
Okay, I'm looking at, do I have any, I see any shaking heads from attorneys?
Is there anyone else who'd like to abstain?
Okay, so I have, so far, I have how many? Let's go do the roll call, so I'll see how we got one abstention and how many ayes and so forth.
Sure. Willingham,
Yes.
Peter,
Sorry, yes.
Bergdorf,
yes.
Clay,
Yeah.
Grimm,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Lukakis, abstain. Mayo,
Yes.
and O'Brien. 8 in favor, Madam Chairwoman, with 1 abstention.
Okay, all right then. So it passes. All right, thank you very much, Ms. McClave. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from us, and we'll try to get something set up where we can get our questions answered, because we all have an issue, the landlord issue. It's very-
Agree. And you're going to be my help to get the word out as well.
Yes, we will. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. All right, now we're going to go back to number 4. Is that correct, Ms. Kennedy?
Yes, Madam Chair. Item 4 is establishing a living wage for employees of the County of Albany and amending the 2021 Albany County budget.
Ms. Lukakis,
Yes,
there you go. You're on.
all right. It's funny to have to do this again in such a short time. But anyway, so as you know, the women of the majority put this forward because it is a women's issue and a minority issue. and it affects 62 employees. And we're asking that the 62 employees be brought up to a living wage of $15 an hour. These employees are cleaning people, clerks, activities people, essential workers who have been really holding the fort down this whole time, and who deserve a living wage. And if you Google living wage in Albany County, it pops up as $15.12. So maybe we're a little short, but we feel like $15 is good. Yes, it has a cost associated with it. It's going to cost $70,000 this year, and it's going to cost over $100,000 next year. And it is the minimum wage from the state government is coming. So it's something that we're going to have to do eventually. We're going to have to prepare ourselves for it. We're asking all of the small businesses to get ready for it also. So I think a good way of us to set an example by figuring out how to do it and doing it is to make the accommodations now and do it and go forward. As you know, people who make $15 an hour make about $31,000 a year if they work full time, and after taxes that comes to about $22,500, which is very difficult to live on. So if we talked a little bit about the unions and whether or not we have the flexibility to legislate this. What I believe is that most of my constituents really are shocked, and I was shocked when I first came here that people were not making $15 an hour who work for the county. I think that we put forth the idea, we send the message that we feel like this is what needs to be done, and then the executive will figure out how to take it to the next step using memos of understanding with the unions. We did reach out to SEIU. I haven't heard back from them, and I pass out of personnel favorably with a very robust conversation. And I know that Mr. Bergdorf has some questions. So shall we just press on? I'm asking you to support this.
I do have some questions, but there are other people who had their hands raised.
Yes, I
before
do.
me.
Yeah, I do. I see that the chairman has his hand up, so I know what he said. So go ahead, Andrew, please.
Oh, thank you, Wanda. No, Lynn had already hit the point. It was live in personnel tonight, and it passed out 8-1. We are going to have to place, recognition of all the hard work of our frontline workers this pandemic, ahead of some temporarily, if you may interpret it this way, difficult financial decisions. I'm supporting this measure. I want to thank Ms. Lakakis for raising this and bringing this to our attention. As we had mentioned before, we're starting to see our way out of this pandemic, see our way out of this crisis. These are the individuals that did not have a choice but to show up to work every single day. And some of these people are the ones that cleaned the nursing home and did other type duties that we are kind of categorizing and saying are frontline essential worker jobs. And the time is now to put our money where our mouth is, quite literally. And actions speak louder than words. And it's time for us to say that we're going to put this temporarily tough financial decision aside and say to these folks that they matter, their hard work matters. And we had Mr. Slatsky on before from the nursing home. I don't know how, but a lot of nursing homes across the state was a nightmare scenario. A lot of folks passed away. This COVID situation went through like wildfire. And we somehow, through maybe a little bit of professionalism, hard work, good management, and a little bit of luck, we got lucky here in Albany County. But it was the essential workers and the people that did not have a choice to do this stuff on Zoom that showed up every single day and kept us safe and did the jobs and did their jobs selflessly. And we need to make note of that tonight. And we need to honor these individuals. And we do so by putting our money where our mouth is and giving them a living wage. And again, I want to thank Ms. Lakakis for raising this and bringing this to our attention to do. And I fully support it. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peter.
Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to commend our colleague, Ms. Lakakis, on this. I believe that, both for retention purposes, we need to make sure that we're competitive, but also that we're being ethical on this. we have to be the leaders where if we're saying a living wage is $15, then those who work for us must, and that we are responsible for governing and setting salaries and things like that, that needs to, we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need to be that moral compass. And I'm very thankful, Lynn, for that, and for Chairman Joyce for your statements, because when we all said these folks were essential, clapping for them and then, putting our pocketbooks away is hypocritical. And we need to stand on that. And for anyone who says, why now? Or can we afford this? And things of that nature, there are always ways and excuses to not pay people what they earn. And that's not why I got in government. It's not why I was elected by my constituents. So I'm a proud sponsor of this, and I'm definitely going to be voting for this, both to move this out of committee and to move this on the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bergdorf.
First of all, I wish I had a recording of the things that I shared with the Personnel Committee. First of all, I'd like to say that I do not have an objection to the 15-hour minimum wage. I do have an objection to the way that we are getting there. I don't believe that the legislature should abrogate existing union agreements. Most of these positions are at the nursing home and across other organizations. They are union positions which extend to the year 2033. Just probably about an hour and a half ago, I got a fiscal impact notice that said 70,000 the first year and somewhere over 100,000 for a full year of 2022. I don't see how that could possibly be the case if half a year is going to cost us $70,000 and a whole year is only going to cost us an extra $30,000. So I asked Dave Riley, and he agreed to do it at the personnel meeting, if we could get a complete financial analysis with the annual cost of this proposal and similar titles, which would impact salary compression. And let me tell you what I mean by salary compression. You might have someone who is an environmental services aide who just started at the nursing home last year at $12.50. And this year they got a 2% raise, so they picked up another 50 cents. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to go to $15 an hour, and you have somebody in the exact same title who has worked at the nursing home for 8 years, making $15.25 an hour. So someone with no experience, all of a sudden, is going to be working next to someone else with 8 years experience at virtually the same pay. And I'm told that there are 158 employees making between $15 and $17 an hour. So there's going to be a huge amount of salary compression if you adopt this plan. And you want to talk about morale, I think it's hypocritical if you want to stand up and support the frontline workers to give the newest frontline workers raises that eclipse those or bring them to parity with those who have been there 6 and 8 years. So I think salary compression is a huge issue. And that's why I think when you go into something like this, you need to have a transition plan. You want to go to 15? Well, then the person at 15, do they go to 17? Does the person at 17 go to 19? And what is that ultimate impact on the county? Nobody's looked at this, but Dave Riley has agreed to put together an analysis for us. Now, I don't suppose that that's going to stop this committee from moving the bill out, but I think it's important for us not to react and create a whole host of unintended consequences. I
Mr.
really
Bergdorf.
don't like the idea.
Mr. Bergdorf,
Yes, ma'am.
I have to say that I've heard what you have to say, and I think you make a very valid point. And so I'm not minimizing what you have said at all. But as you've stated, you've asked, and I don't even know if he's still on here or not. Who was it? Was it Mr.
Dave Riley.
Okay, and so right now, the only thing I just want to is get an amen from him that he has heard that request. Mr. Riley.
Yes, ma'am. As I told Mr. Bergdorf in the previous meeting, I can put that together all the way up to $20 an hour employees.
Okay, so let me just ask you a quick question on that then. So is this something that, have we ever been faced with this in the past? Well, and bringing people up to, you know, the new salary or the cap, or when they've raised salaries in the past, hourly salaries in the past?
When the state brought up our current minimum wage at $12.50, it was phased in, and that's why the city is at 15 now, and we're still at $12.50 because the cost of living being cheaper up here.
Okay, so this is something that you.
The city of.
You're talking about New York City.
Excuse me.
New York City, yes.
Yes, New York City. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was another point that I two more points and I'm done.
Okay, so just be mindful of the time. And if you're going to ask, are you going to ask a question? Let me just say this much, because we do have our finance people here from the county. So if you're going to ask a question, okay, ask the question. But don't give us the answer. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. Okay.
Okay.
Although you make wonderful points, I just want you to be mindful of that. Okay.
I do. I am concerned, and maybe Eric and Dave could talk about this. With when Dave does his full fiscal analysis, there's only a certain amount of money that he can pump into salary increases before he exceeds the tax cap. And by the legislature making these unilateral decisions in the absence of management having negotiated a transition and a plan, it may limit and may have unintended consequences. So I would like to ask that our fiscal staff work with the county executive staff to at least identify potential problems in putting together the 2022 budget. And with that, I will close my comments and questions.
Okay. So Mr. Riley, do you have any other comments on that? And after you, I'd like to know if there's any other comments from any other members.
No, I will put that analysis together. I do understand the concept Mr. Bergdorf's talking about with the compression, and I'm sure it will be a thing.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other questions or comments from any other members?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Grimm.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and yeah, we did have a robust discussion, as my good friend Lynn McConaughey said. Let's be clear about a couple of things. We already have raised the minimum wage. I mean, the state went through a very elaborate process to raise the minimum wage, and it took into account the understanding that New York City's cost of living is different than other parts of the state, which of course is not disputable. And it came up with a schedule raising the minimum wage to $12.50 here upstate. And it also has a mechanism that allows that to be raised based on the economic indicators, which of course is sensible. We certainly should know what the economy is doing before we impose higher rates on salaries. So we already have a minimum wage, which is important to understand. Secondly, this does interfere with union contracts that were negotiated by the county executive and the unions. Now, those contracts, this legislature approved unanimously. So we're overriding what we approved already with previous votes. And many of the employees are members of a union who are going to be impacted by this. So this puts us in a difficult situation in terms of the integrity of union negotiations, because we're basically saying we're going beyond that and we're going to change things. So I'm for a minimum wage. It was terrible the way corporations exploited workers before a minimum wage was in place. And we can argue about what the right number is. But a couple of points here that cannot be disputed, that the state has already raised the minimum wage with the recognition that upstate New York has different cost of living than New York City. And secondly, this is a direct interference with the negotiation of union contracts between the county executive and the unions. So although I appreciate our workers as much as anybody else, and by the way, they get great health care and they get great pensions, which many private sector employees do not provide, particularly to minimum wage workers. And I've been a minimum wage worker with almost no benefits. So we do right by our employees, and good for them, because they've been through a tough year and we appreciate what they've done. Thank you,
All right.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Are we ready? Can I entertain a motion now?
Motion, Madam Chair.
I have a motion from Mr. Peter. Can I get a second?
A second.
I have a second from Mr. Mayo. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
I have 2 opposed. How many present, Ms. Kennedy? Ms. Kennedy?
Sorry, I was muted. 9 present
9 present. So is that 7?
to 2. Mhm.
Okay, so that's 7 to 2. So it passes. Thank you very much. All right, I believe that was our last item for this evening. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. And I want to thank everyone for their comments on all sides and sponsors that are here. Thank you, Lynn. I do agree with what you're trying to do. And so I want to say good night to everyone and enjoy the rest of your evening. And not before I call for a motion for adjournment.
Yeah, for the vote, yeah.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I got a motion, Ms. Mayor. I got a second from?
Me.
From Mr. Katz.
I'm done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Good
much.
night.
Congratulations,